Welcome to our first of the year for 2021 academic tech trainings. Our first guests are from Yellowdig. Bob, I just blew my mind, just flew out of my mind. You're how to whoa.
Erdischek. How about that?
Erdischek. Okay.
That.
So Bob Erdischek and Jim Gandolfo. And I told Jim I could remember his name because I used to eat a lot of sandwiches at Gandolfo's. Anyway, it's a New York style deli here in Utah. I don't know if they have locations elsewhere, but anyway, so we'll be having these almost every week through May, June, July, and even possibly one in August. So tell your friends if you find things interesting to come back and we'd love to have you. So Yellowdig, we'll let our illustrious guests introduce the tool, but we also have Denise Cummins from the College of Nursing, and they've been piloting Yellowdig already and are planning on adopting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that, I don't want to put you on the spot, Denise, but is that correct?
We're considering it.
Okay, considering.
Discussions about
Gotcha. Okay. But we want to be clear, some of the tools that we'll be highlighting this summer are already licensed by the university. Others will be ones that either offer a free pilot or just generally free. But we want to be clear that there is a cost associated with Yellowdig, and we do not have a university license yet. That would take a critical mass of people actually using the tool before the university usually decides to offer that. But we still want to make you aware, but we also want to be clear what the situation is so you don't get overly excited and say, okay, I'm going to jump in and do this when you may face a cost at some point in time. Anyway, with that said, I will turn the time over to Bob and Jim. And if you can, like I said, Denise has joined us so she can share some on the ground, we've done this, here's how it worked for us kind of voice. So if you want to include her in wherever you feel like her voice would fit, that would be great. And we'll turn the time over to Bob and Jim, and I'll mute so that you don't have to listen to me anymore.
Thanks for the introduction, Mike. Appreciate everybody showing up today. It's nice to meet everyone and see your faces and names. For those who don't have cameras on, no worries. I'm Jim Gandolfo. I've been working at Yellowdig for about 1.5 years now, and working on building relationships with schools like yourselves. And I brought Bob on as well to help with the presentation here today. Any questions that come up, feel free to ask them. Denise, any relevant experience that you have in the platform, feel free to interrupt us as well and just jump right in. We're excited to hear that as also.
And I guess that's my cue. So I'm Bob Erdischek. I think that's how you pronounce it. Mike, and your last name is Johnson. Is that correct? Johnson? Just want to, sorry, we're being silly. But thanks for joining us today. I want to share a little bit about my background because I think it informs why I'm here talking to you today to some degree. I'm Yellowdig's academic lead, but I come from a higher ed teaching background. And at around the turn of the century, which is fun to say, that long ago, I started, and Julie's laughing at that, so thank you, Julie, appreciate that. I transitioned from a law career into higher education a little before the turn of the century. And at the turn of the century, I started working in an online learning department, helping instructors, even back then, move their courses online, whether that was a distance sort of paradigm, or even then in a blended, adding, online components to their face-to-face courses. And while I loved the promise of online learning, the ability to bring in distance students, or to expand the classroom from 50 minutes 3 times a week to allow those students who don't really get a chance to bubble up in the conversation sometimes, for various reasons, either they're shy or they're just not getting the opportunity because there's not enough time to get in. I thought that the tools and the pedagogy of the time didn't really create that learning community type of that I was looking for. I went on, using my law background, I went on to teach political science for over a decade, and mostly in face-to-face courses. And I stayed away from the learning management systems of that day, because of the reasons I said. And I tried using all kinds of other crazy tools to expand my classroom from beyond that 50 minutes 3 times a week. I used AOL Instant Messenger, Facebook, Twitter, all kinds of blog, crazy stuff to try to just allow my students to have more of a voice. And also because I found it important for me to inform my teaching, to learn where they were, as opposed to just having the 5 people in the front row who were raising their hand, to be able to get more out of what was going on. So when I found Yellowdig, I realized that this was the tool that I had been looking for all this time in my teaching career, because it really, it's built for higher education. It's intuitive for students to learn, but it also has some behind the scenes pieces that really motivate students to participate, and maybe even more importantly than anything, help inform teaching. So I was lucky enough that they had me join, and I'm happy to be here talking to people. I work with our clients to talk about pedagogy best practices and getting the most out of using Yellowdig. So with that, I'd love to jump into a few slides, and then we'll jump into the platform. Is that okay with everybody? Awesome. Now we're going to go to what I think is the hardest part of my job, and that is choosing the right screen out of my many screens to choose from the share screen. So hopefully that will work. And okay, here are we looking at a screen?
Yep, we've got your agenda.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to go through the agenda.
What makes
we're not gonna spend a ton of time on the slides, but let's talk about learning itself. Why would you want to have a learning community in your associated with your course? And part of the reasons are, you want to have the ability for students to share relevant information, things that relate to the course that they can process and give their real life experiences or what's going on in the world, to allow for critical thinking. I mean, you can read, so I'm not going to read through the slide, but these are components of things that make learning better and that are related to a learning community. And oftentimes I think that we all recognize that having a social presence in learning is important. Obviously there's the teaching presence, where the one-to-many, where I'm telling you, my students, about the subject matter, and you as the students have the cognitive presence where you're thinking about it. But that social presence allows you to really process it, to learn from each other, to correct sort of where you're going with your thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And the problem is that oftentimes I think that social presence is assumed and it's not really there. So let me give you a couple of examples. In the online world, we have discussion boards. We're all familiar with the discussion boards. But in those communities, those are not real conversations. They are basically, we'll get into this a little bit more, but they're really people responding to instructor prompts for the most part. And they're not natural conversations. And they don't allow a lot of relevance and real world sort of processing to be along with that. And in our face-to-face classes, that's where we really think we have the social presence. But really in your classes, I don't know how many people you have in your classes, but students, they come in 5 minutes before class, maybe not. They talk to the people who are sitting next to them on the right or left, maybe behind them, and the people in the back row talk to the people in the back row, people in the front row talk to the people in the front row. And we think that we're having that social presence because we're having a conversation in class. But oftentimes, again, I, as the instructor, am the center of that conversation, and all of the communication is largely going through me. And it's not everybody in the class. It's just those people who can break through in the 50 minutes, 3 hours a week. And sometimes students have study groups outside of class. But again, I think we overestimate the number of students who are in study groups. And even if they are in study groups, they're dealing with the same small set of people who they deal with regularly anyway. So they're not getting that input from other people who might provide a different perspective than what they're looking for. Does this ring true to anybody? Does this sound like reality to people at all? You can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something like that if you want. Or nothing. You don't have to do anything.
Denise, is there anything that you could share on this from your experience? Not to put you on the spot. It's okay.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, and with Nursing 320, we added Yellowdig because we really saw a need to increase connectedness between students. We scored low on that particular indicator at our mid-course survey when we first went all online. And so we kind of followed the advice that we got from Yellowdig to kind of let the conversations develop naturally with some direction, but not too much directedness. And I think it really worked well. Our students did say at the mid-course and end of course survey, they really valued that. And the conversations were, they were social conversations, and yet they did touch upon topics that were important in the class. I don't know if that answers your particular question, but.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what I'm showing you now, and we're going to call on you some more later, Denise, just to give me a little bit of time. What I'm showing you now is sort of a diagram that outlines, the standard discussion board pedagogy, the post once, comment twice online pedagogy that has been around forever. And like I said, was one of the reasons that I sort of moved away from this. And we have a couple of thoughts on why it might be valuable for assessing students on what they're writing, but it really doesn't create a community at all, and it doesn't create conversations. And the reason for that, let me just go sort of through this. So basically what you have here is at the beginning of every week, you have the instructor. You can see a little icon for the instructor, the sage on the stage, who is directing students to respond to a prompt for that particular week, right? And then the students are directed to, all of the students are answering the same prompt, writing it to who? To each other? Probably not, probably to the instructor, right? And then they're called upon to reply to two of their peers' posts, who, by the way, wrote to the same prompt, and the quality of those responses are often things like, I agree, well said, I just wrote the same thing in my response, something like that. And it doesn't lead to real conversation. But there are other problems with this model as well. So the instructor gives the prompt, and it's an assignment with a due date. You have to create your post and respond to two other people by Sunday at midnight or something like that, right? And so there are some procrastinators. I mean, you do have your go-getter student who wants to impress or maybe is very interested in the subject matter, and they jump in first. And if they do, there's not really anyone else there who's maybe necessarily on the same page. And so they're putting it all out there, but nobody's there to respond. Most of the students are looking at this as an assignment with a deadline, so they're organizing their lives accordingly. I've got other things to do, so I will make sure that I have it done by Sunday at midnight. So that also doesn't lead to the conversation. And then there are some students who are, frankly, procrastinators, and they'll wait till the last minute if they make it at all. And let's suppose we do have someone, whether they're a procrastinator or they just organize their lives to finish the assignment on time. Once they get in there, they're the last person in there. Who is going to reply to their comment, to their post? Nobody. It's over. And now, just when that conversation could get good, that conversation is dead forever, because no one else is going to ever go back there and read those posts or comments, except for the poor instructor who has to go back and read all of them, the same one over again. And frankly, I just want to mention that I know you're in Utah, you're in Provo mostly, and some other spots, is that right? Well, I spent 7 years scoring AP US government exams in Salt Lake City. And basically that was like this model on steroids. I would read 5,000 responses to the same prompt over the course of 10 days, as would 600 of my peers. So, you know, it's sort of mind-numbing from the professor perspective as well. And it's not really creating that conversation. And as the semester goes on, even that go-getter student realizes that there's not a lot of conversation here, that really more or less, this is a public way to submit a written assignment to the professor. And so Yellowdig is, if my computer will go away from that, is very different in that perspective. I want you, and I wish that would stay on the screen. So this diagram sort of shows our pedagogy. In that, first of all, you'll notice that the instructor isn't necessarily the person who is at the beginning of each and every conversation. And that's because we view our communities as instructor modeled rather than instructor led. The instructor has a role. That role is primarily to set expectations explicitly as to what the purpose of the community is, what the role of the instructor is, and what the expectations of students are in that community. And then to be a participant in the community like anybody else, to share the passion for the subject matter, to jump in the conversations that interest the instructor and start their own conversations if they're interesting, but effectively to not really need to do the heavy lifting in the community, but to be a participant in the community. And this allows students agency to bring in what they think is important, what they're learning about the particular course. You'll notice that there are dots and dashes and conversations seem to ebb and flow. And that's by design. Yellowdig allows conversations to continue when they become relevant. So in my own classes, again, I think I mentioned I taught American government. In my own classes, in week 2 of my American government course, we talk about the Constitution. Now, the Constitution should be the whole course, that's another discussion, but in week 2, we talk about the Constitution. And part of the Constitution, Article 2, is the president has the authority to appoint cabinet members, but they have to be approved by the Senate, right? And if week 7 of the course, the president's actually doing that, if he's appointing someone to his cabinet and the Senate has to approve that, do I want my students to reflect on that? Do I want them to be able to process that and comment on that? I'll give you a hint. The answer is, yeah, I do.
Yes.
The reason why I want that is, first of all, it's good for them. It's good for them to learn. It's good for me to see if they've gotten it or not. And then I can, if necessary, I can go back and say, oh, you got that right? Or, well, you know what, maybe, that's not exactly how we would look at this. Maybe I would direct them a little bit more. So that can do something for them, but it can do something for me as well. And the other thing is, we allow students to ask and answer each other's questions in Yellowdig. Again, more student agency. Answering questions for your peers is very powerful learning experience. You have to think about what the subject matter is. You have to formulate a response and then make that response into a written or verbal communication that others can understand. So that can be really powerful learning experience. So Yellowdig allows all of these things to happen. Jim, was there anything you wanted to add on that? You don't have to. I just wondered if you wanted to.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that I was thinking that might be relevant is, while the slide that Bob showed before is the typical illustration, and we can sometimes get creative with how these conversations happen or how these discussion prompts go, inevitably, pretty much always, no matter what, it ends up being in this sort of segmented way each week, because each week is an independent week of themselves, where you have to go in and grade. And we see a couple of profound things happen there, and especially in our core classes and our classes that are major requirements, where students, if they enter the class late, there's no way to make up those zeros, or if they end up getting zeros because life comes in the way, they actually don't have an opportunity to make those up. And as Bob mentioned, students aren't going back to previous weeks because they're not necessarily incentivized to do so, because they're not earning points for those conversations. And that's one of the things that Yellowdig starts to solve for, is actually incentivizing students to have those conversations as they're going through the course and relating those topics as they continue to build on one another. And also there's a buffer in place, which I'm sure we'll get into once we get into the platform, in the point system that allows for students to make up points if they missed points in weeks prior, or earn additional points for weeks coming up, as we know that our life is becoming more busy, and allows for those extra earning points in periods.
Any questions before we move on? Anyone? Or Denise, anything you want to add?
No, not at this point. I think you've kind of represented the experience that we've had with Yellowdig quite well.
Awesome. Yay. So before we jump in the platform, I just want to share this one last slide. And what this indicates is that, we've all been on Zoom, or we've all been in face-to-face classes. And in those synchronous experiences, we are limited by time, and the ability for students to participate in that time is very limited to 50 minutes twice a week, or an hour and 20 minutes, or 50 minutes 3 times a week, hour and 20 twice a week, or whatever you have there. And obviously an asynchronous platform allows for more of that. And what this slide is showing is the Yellowdig heat map, showing that there are actually people participating, 24/7 basically, because it's easy, and it's there, and they have the time to think about what they're going to say and come in when it works for them. I'm going to jump into the platform now. Oh, is there something in the chat? I see that there's a number there.
It was an accident, actually.
Oh.
Sorry. It was meant for later, but so just keep rolling with it.
All right.
Doing great.
Well, thank you for that. So hopefully now we're seeing a Yellowdig community. Are we? Okay, awesome.
Yes, we are.
And what a Yellowdig community looks like, it should be very familiar. It's a single scrolling feed, such that you would see on on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, any of the social networks that your students are frankly going to be very familiar with, and probably you as well. You may not be using the same social networks as your students, but posting and commenting and all that kind of stuff is going to be very intuitive as far as that goes. But Yellowdig is not a social network. It is a purpose-built higher education platform, and it has features designed for that purpose itself. So it's not the Wild West like your Twitter, Facebook. It's FERPA compliant. It's accessibility rated, but more importantly, well, not more importantly, but equally importantly, it is designed to do things that you need it to do in your classes. And the first thing I'll get to real quickly is the point system that Jim mentioned. So Yellowdig has a point system that's associated with your course, and those points can be passed back to to your grade book at becoming a participation grade for the course. And of course, it's assessed objectively through the earning of these points. But the point system itself is designed to break that paradigm that we saw in that first diagram of the students who were procrastinating or waiting till the end of the session. And the way the point system works is this. You as the instructor or instructional designer, whoever's setting up the course, sets up a point target for the entire term, the entire semester, what have you. In our standard platform, that's broken down into earning periods. The students can earn a certain amount of points of that total each week. And what this does is it drives students back into the platform and creates better posts. And let me explain how it does this. So there are two types of points, 2 point categories in Yellowdig. The first type is what we call the participation points. These are the points you get for typing. So if Denise created a post and it met the minimum word criteria, which you set, we have recommendations for, she gets points. Yay, Denise, nice job. And if, let's see, Barbara sees Denise post and comments on it and types in the required number of words for comments, again, that you set, Barbara gets points. That's pretty intuitive, okay? But it's not really what changes things. It's not what gets people in the platform creating things earlier and all. What changes things, what gets students posting in and not procrastinating and posting better content, better conversations, are what we call the social points. And these are really important. Okay, so let's go back to that paradigm that we had before. Denise created a post, she got some points. Barbara commented on her post, she got some points. But what also happens here in this is that when Barbara commented on Denise's post, Denise got some additional points because Barbara commented on her post, right? And because Denise went in earlier in the week, when more students saw her post, and so Denise learned, if I go in earlier in the week, more people are going to see my post, they're more likely to comment, I'm more likely to get points, meaning that by going in earlier in the week, by not procrastinating, I have slightly less work to do, okay? But let's turn it around a little bit, shall we? So this time, Mike Johnson post. I'm sorry, Mike, I'm just having fun again.
No, I apologize, Bob.
So Mike posts, and Mike, I'm just picking on you. I hope you won't take this personally because it's just a silliness here. So Mike creates a post, and this time, you know, everyone's in the class, Julie and Stephen and David, they see your post, but they don't comment. They don't give you a thumbs up. You went in early in the week, went on Monday right away and posted because you knew that if I post early, people see my post, blah, blah. So why didn't anybody comment on Mike's post? Julie, you look like you're, what was that?
Maybe it wasn't interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't interesting, or maybe it wasn't relevant, or perhaps it wasn't, you know, communicated well enough or something. And, you know, I'm sure, Mike, that would never be the case. I'm just, you know, but
well, I wouldn't put it past me.
but the point here is that Mike learned, I hope, that not only do you have to go in earlier to get these social points, but you have to create content that's going to be interesting and relevant to your peers. So it drives more conversations, but it also drives better conversations. So that's the value of using these social points. And we encourage you, when you set up the points, to make sure that you do them. Because I know some people sometimes think, well, what's the point of having an emoji or, you know, thumbs up? Well, it means people are reading the content, right? You don't get that all the time. Without that, you know, it's so easy to scroll. But if you're reading something, you're more likely to give it a thumbs up. And because you can give it a thumbs up, you're more likely, I mean, it's sort of a circle. You're going to read it because it's there in your feed and you're going to acknowledge it. So that can be really good for getting conversations going, even if people aren't posting or commenting. Even the reactions indicate that they're in there and that they're paying attention. Any questions about the points before we move on?
Yeah, I've got a question. So
yeah, Stephen, right?
Just excuse me.
I just want to make sure it was you. I couldn't tell on my screen who was talking.
Yeah, Stephen here. You know, when you create a point system, students are intelligent, so they figure out the system and how to maximize it, how to optimize surrounding the different point values, depending on, you know, whether you're posting or responding or reacting or whatever it may be. Is there some sort of, you know, is there a moderator of some sort to make sure that it's actually legitimate posting, legitimate responses, right?
Excellent question.
Yeah. So how do you decrease the gaming of the scoring system that you've got?
So we've never heard this question before, have we? No, we have heard this question before. And the answer is this. So first of all, it doesn't happen very much. So I know that's not what you want to hear, but let's talk about if it did happen. So one of the things that really mitigates it is, again, first of all, you're going to be able to see very easily in a number of ways if this is happening. And there are tools for, you know, for reducing points or removing posts if you see that happen. But again, your role in the community is to model the behavior that you want to see. And so explicitly saying in the beginning, if you feel like your students are going to be performing in that way, I would, you know, that, you know, you want to keep these conversations on topic, and that we'll be able to see if you're not doing that and reduce points. You can say that. I don't know if you're going to need to do that, but you can say it. But I want to go a little bit further on that question. So it's a long, complicated answer, but it segues me to my next thing that I wanted to talk about. And that's these guys right up here. All right. These guys are called topic tags. All right. And we would encourage you to make these topic tags required in your Yellowdig community. And I'll show you the setting to do that. And these topic tags do three different things. Actually 4, considering what you're talking about. So when you require the topic tags, and the topic tags should, generally speaking, we recommend that they align with your top level syllabus subject matter, right? You know, whatever your course in my class in American government and Constitution, civil liberty, you know, you get the idea, right? As for what, along with certain course management functions. And now, once you've made those topics, when a student posts, they will be required, they will not be able to create a post without attaching one of those topics to it, okay? So this does 3 things. The first thing it does is it makes it so that there's less redundancy in the community, because you can easily follow those conversations. Remember the ebbing and flowing and all that kind of fun stuff? So the topic tags are what make that happen, because if I click on one of these topic tags, my entire feed will filter to show only posts and comments related to that topic tag. Okay, so that's the first thing it does. The second thing it does is if I'm a student and I see, I can't just have a conversation about, hey, the weather's nice, whatever, because I have to attach one of those topic tags to it. But beyond that, I also have to think about, I'm bringing something into the course, whatever it is. I have to think about, why am I bringing this in the course, and where in the course does it fit, right? Is it related to, in my class, you know, Article 3, or is it related to elections, or, you know, what have you, right? So it does that. And then the third thing that it does, and this is for you as instructors, excuse me. Come on, little computer. I'm sorry, my computer is like overloaded. I've got like 70 tabs open and I just didn't get a chance to close them all. So give me a minute while it takes you to our community health area. And one of the third tab here is topics. And when you require topics, you're going to get metrics on how students are engaging in those topics. On the global basis, you're going to be able to see which conversations students are having. You know, what are they spending time on? Are they spending time on marketing? Are they spending time on finance? What have you, whatever your class is, as a global basis. And you can say to yourself, well, they've spent a lot of time in this, maybe I should move on to something else, or maybe I need to spend a little more time on this in my face-to-face part of my class so that they can, you know, learn, you know, they're obviously not spending enough time on that. But you can also see on an individual basis what those students are engaging on. And this can be useful for you as an instructor in a couple of ways. First of all, with the case of Olivia's student here, you can see somebody who's very interested in this topic, and maybe they have some real life experience that you want to surface into your main class. You can also see as an early warning sign that some students, like Sarah here, hasn't spent any time on this topic. And so you can also react to that in a way that can, you know, bring that out for that student in one way or the other. So those topics are one way of dealing with that. Another thing that you can use is our network graph. Our network graph shows you, let me zoom in a little bit here, who's communicating with who your outliers are, what the strength of these connections are. I'm going to zoom in even more, I guess. And, you know, you can reach out to those students who are not participating fully, or who are in small groups or only contributing, you know, saying how's the weather to each other or something like that. So you have the ability to do that. Beyond that, there's more to get to you, Stephen. You have the ability to empower students to flag posts. If they're like, if I clicked flag post and it was off topic or something like that, that would move that post out of the main feed into the flag post area where you as the instructor could decide what to do with it. And in addition to that, or not in addition, as an alternative to that, you can also manage the points. You could just take away points from that post, giving a reason why. So there are a lot of ways to mitigate that. But honestly, if you set expectations and explicitly and tell students what and model the kind of behavior that you want, it's unlikely that you're going to get that kind of behavior to begin with. So I hope that.
Bob, could I just share our experience with that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we started out with Yellowdig, our primary concern was about students feeling isolated, not being part of a kind of a an at least a partially in-person classroom format. So when we started out, we were really most focused on that, and we understood that we should not be too directed. And I think we erred on the side of being not as directed as we should have been, direct with the students about what the expectations were. And so I think that some of what we got in response, it was kind of more social type posts. But I think that that was more of an issue on our side, as far as really clearly each week letting the students know what the kind of topics they should comment on should be, should talk about, should be. Not necessarily saying, this is graded, or, but I think a little bit more direction on our part would have helped the students to stay more on topic. I think that the topic tags would be very helpful. The other thing I just wanted to mention here too is about the time that's involved in creating these posts for the students. I don't think Yellowdig is something that you can just add to whatever you're already doing. It really does take students time to craft these posts. And so you need to consider that in your other assignments so that you don't overwhelm your students, because it does take time and thought for them to create these posts. We had the instructor, the section instructor, and especially the TAs getting in there to kind of keep people on track. And that was helpful.
Thank you, Denise. And yeah, I mean, if you weren't using the topic tags, they can be really useful. But I also want to add something to Denise's point is that, having that social piece of it is really not, it probably should be there to some degree. I mean, especially if you're talking about a fully online class, giving people the opportunity to sort of know each other a little bit, I think opens them up for agency and creating more connection on the topic itself if they know a little bit more about what's going on, with each other. And that brings me to my next little piece of the pie here. And that's, we were talking about setting expectations and the role of the instructor to some degree in these communities. And the Yellowdig community is also a great place for you to do that. And when you start your Yellowdig community, one thing that we like to recommend is using Yellowdig to set those expectations. And as you can see, there's a record video function here. And now you can see I'm not really in a nice library. I'm in a crappy little room with a green screen. Sorry about that. But so, I like to encourage people to start modeling the behavior they want by starting the community with welcome to Yellowdig. I'm Professor Erdős, or Bob, or Bald Guy, whatever you want to call me. And this community is here for us to learn together, for us to share what we find interesting and relevant about the subject matter at hand. You obviously use your own course. As for me, my role here, I'm a citizen of this community like you. I'm going to read posts, and I'm going to comment when I think it's appropriate. And if I see something really cool, I'm going to bring it into the community as well. But don't expect me to comment or like every single post you do. On the other side of the coin, you have points to earn, and you can get those points that are going to be part of your grade simply by bringing in what you think is relevant and related to the course. I'd also like you to encourage you to introduce yourselves in the way that I'm doing here to your peers. You don't have to use video if you don't want to, but tell us a little bit about yourselves. And you get the idea. So using this as a tool that can start that modeling of the type of behavior that you want to do. And by the way, you have 90 seconds in this record video function. And if you're like me and you make mistakes a lot, one thing I really love about this is that I can pause mid-video to take a breath and think about what I'm going to say and then start it again. So, but we'll just throw this away. Before I do that, I want to talk about the posting. One other thing. So on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever, you can put one thing in a post, right? I can put the video and that would be it. But one of the things I really happen to like about Yellowdig is that I can add more things here. So I can, on this single post, I can put a poll, which is great for formative assessment, find out what's going on with your students before you jump into the subject, see what they know. I can put the poll there. I can, add a PDF file of whatever, the syllabus or what have you, or images and all that kind of stuff. I can even annotate images as well. I don't think I have one handy, so yeah, I don't have a good image handy. I'm sorry. So I'm not going to do that. But basically, you can draw on images, text, maps, graphs, whatever, X-rays, whatever you want to do. But you can put these all in one post to sort of keep them together. And I'm going to close that. The other thing is that the other way that you can show presence in the community without being overwhelming is through these guys. These guys are called accolades. And again, they're defined by you. We give you a couple of defaults, but you can do better than us, believe me. I'll show you that in a minute. And these accolades allow you to be present in a community, to show that you're there without commenting, without feeling the need to comment or to insinuate yourself in every conversation. So, here's a couple of accolades can have point values to them as well. So you can give students a little bump by giving them an accolade. And, you can say great post or shows critical thinking or great question, whatever you want to do. And you can define these. And the way that you would add an accolade to a post is simply clicking on this little manage accolades button and then choosing the accolade that you predefined over here in accolades to do that. But one of my favorite ways to use accolades is, frankly, to a large degree, designed to save you a little bit of work. I don't know about you, but I hated getting emails from students all asking me the same question, 50, 60, 700 times, whatever it is, right? So if you direct students to ask and answer all questions that they have, not via email or something else, but in Yellowdig particularly, go to Yellowdig to ask the questions. First of all, it's going to save you from saying, look at the syllabus, it's in the syllabus, I saw it's in the syllabus, right? But if you tell students to have the agency to ask those questions, but also to answer them, that does a bunch of things. We already said that having students answer questions is a really powerful learning tool for the student who's doing the answering, frankly, right? The problem is, you want to take your hands off the wheel for a minute, let them have 24 or 48 hours to answer the questions that someone has posted. But the problem is, if 13, 14 students go ahead and give a response to that, how is a student to know which is the answer that they should rely on when they're studying or when they're thinking about the topic or whatever? So using an accolade that we call verified response, or you call instructor approved answer or something like that, allows you, after that period of time that you're comfortable with and allowing students to answer the questions for each other, to go in there without typing a single word and just put this accolade on the response that is closest to what you would want them to have. So then they know, oh, that's what I should look at. They've all had this learning experience, and now you know what the real answer is, because that's what they want to know ultimately. But you didn't have to do much to do that. And then to make it even better, I think, just like the topic tags, accolades are filterable. So when it comes time to study or whatever, if they click on this verified response tag or whatever you want to call it, they will get the feed that creates basically a study guide or an FAQ right there just by clicking that. So we think that can be really powerful as far as that goes. Any questions at this point?
We had one from Julie Hatchett that Jim has answered. I don't know if Jim wants to elaborate on his response there, or if he's heard back from Julie. And I posted a question as well, which I'll read.
Sure.
Can we and students set up notifications so we know when a new post or response to a question we've been asked is answered, or someone mentions us in a post, etc.? And then I was just typing a follow-up question. Is there any way that a student can, using Yellowdig, can ask a private question of the instructor in case they are asking something that's sensitive, like I don't know, that they just don't want to make everybody aware of?
Actually, yeah, all those things. So by default, there are a series of notifications that people get when particular actions occur in Yellowdig. I'm going to just show you where those are. So down here is where your personal avatar here is. And if you go to account settings and you go to, guess which one?
Notifications.
No, Mike, it's notifications. Thanks for
Oh, okay.
trying though, all right? By default, you'll see that all of these are turned on, right? But so they would get, whenever someone posts in the community, they'll get a notification by email and also in the app. You'll see this little guy over here. When someone reacts to your post, when someone comments on your post, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. But you have the ability to control which of those notifications you want to receive. So that's the first answer to your question.
Right,
And then I'm going to go back to the community real quick here. So there are a couple different ways to, well, to privately communicate with someone else in Yellowdig. I should have just stayed where I was. Here we go. You'll notice the avatar, like you see down here, the avatar. When you hover over an avatar,
there's a message.
You have the ability to message. And by the way, if there's a green circle around the avatar, like there is
that means they're currently online.
Yeah, doesn't mean they're going to respond to you, because
right.
But yeah, so that's how that works. Was there another question, or did I answer that?
I have a question for Denise. How much time does it take to then go through all of these? I teach literature, so I'm already reading 1,000 things a semester. How much extra time does it take to go through all these then?
Barbara, I actually was this semester, because of other assignments, I was the course coordinator, but I wasn't actually an instructor in of one of the sections. We had 3 sections. My understanding is that most of the work was done by the TAs, that they were moderating these for the most part. The instructors would go in and they would kind of review and make sure everyone was staying on topic. Also, the notifications to your email, if it was very helpful. You get notifications in your email if there was a comment that a student had made on one of your posts, or if you had made comments on their posts and that kind of a thing. So my understanding is that the instructors did not have, it was not a lot of additional work for the instructors. It was more work for the TAs though.
Can I make a suggestion as far as sort of the workflow for an instructor? So what we recommend is, first of all, would you read everything on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever? You wouldn't, right? And the way the Yellowdig the feed works is those posts that are the most active and the most popular, the most engaged with, rise to the top of the feed. You can sort that, but that's the default, okay? And we would say, don't read every post. The ones that are engaging are the ones that are going to show up at the top, all right? They're the ones who you're going to see. And so we'd recommend grab your cup of coffee or whatever beverage of choice you have in the morning or whenever it's appropriate. Drink your coffee, scroll through, give a thumbs up on those comments, posts you like, add an accolade where you think it's necessary. Bring in your own post if you want. And that's what you do, spend 10, 20 minutes, a couple times, 3 or 4 times a week, maybe a few more minutes, but you shouldn't feel obligated. And you should set this expectation with students in the beginning too, that you're not, that's not your job here. This is not a place where you're not grading per se these posts, right? You're a member of the community who's interested in what's going on. Does that help, Barbara?
I just wanted to comment too, as a course coordinator, I would get into the different sections from time to time, and I would do what Bob said. I would kind of scroll down and just kind of take the pulse of what was going on in there. And I would make a comment here and there. I would, click that I liked something and here and there too. And actually the posts were very fun and engaging. I found some of them, I laughed out loud at some of them. So I don't, just my perusal as the course coordinator, it didn't seem like it was a lot of extra work for the instructor.
Okay, thank you.
we have only got about 10 minutes left, and I just want to leave it open at the end, but I want to just share one final thing, and that's the sort of depth of data that you have to use for your own purposes to see how the course is going. And obviously you can see that there's a tab called data. If you click under that, the community health area, I showed you briefly how to access the topics, which I think is a wonderful piece here. But in the summary, you'll be able to see, you know, the overall metrics of your community. We happen to think that this metric here that we call the conversation ratio is probably the most important as to the health of your community. And what that conversation ratio is the number of posts to the number of comments to the number of posts. In that standard online pedagogy, that number would be 2. This is a demo community with nothing happening. It's only 3.54. We generally like to see that conversation ratio up around 7 or 8. So in other words, 1 post, 8 or so comments. That's showing that there's real conversations, real community that's growing there. In addition to that, you can always see if you're in line with our basic best practices by clicking on the health check, which will come up momentarily. And there'll be green check marks if you've followed our these are not like best practices or sort of things, you know, setting the points, checking things to start your community. But more importantly than that, if you scroll down that page, you'll be able to see how your community rates compared to all the other Yellowdig communities on 3 important points. The sharing score, which by the way is the least important. The sharing score is people posting, how many links they've posted. It doesn't show reading, it doesn't show community building. It's more performative. The listening score, which is much more important, you know, are people reading the comments and posts? Are they, what's the conversation ratio? How many hyperlinks are they clicking? And then the interacting score, which shows the number of connections between students and you know, posts with more than 1 comment, all kinds of things that show the health of your community. You also have the ability, and this is, I think, pretty important for you, to see where your students are with regard to points at a glance. And then of course, you can also download points reports as CSVs. When you set up your Yellowdig communities, which learning management system do you use, by the way?
We have a BYU built their own learning management system called BYU Learning Suite, and we also have several users on Canvas.
Okay. Well,
ours was on Canvas, and it was something that was nice about using Canvas was that the points, the Yellowdig points, translated and populated our grade book in Canvas without us having to do any fancy footwork or analytics ourselves.
Yeah, and that happens through what's called LTI, and we can do that in Learning Suite as well.
So if you're able to do that, and you know, our support team can help you with the configuration depending on your LMS, then those Yellowdig points will be transferred, will be moved back into the grade book. If not, though, that's also just fine. In the points report, you know, you can easily just sort of, you know, depending on the number of students you have, move those into a grade book as well. And then I think I mentioned before the network graph, which again can help you see who's communicating and who's not in your course. Jim, was there anything else that you think that we should mention?
I think this has been pretty thorough. One of the things I wanted to mention, just to go back to Stephen's question, you know, anecdotally, I think what we see a lot of times is that it's a behavior change, and actually also Barbara's as well. It's a behavior change on the instructor side, where we're not expecting you to read every single thing. You're not having to grade. So instead of having to grade, you can reassign that time to actually be an active member. And then as far as Stephen's question, to address that a little bit further, anecdotally, what we've heard, one of our instructors, I can't remember, I think it was with Arcadia, another small school outside of Philadelphia where we're located, mentioned that Yellowdig is a place where people come for the points originally and stay for the conversation in the community. And I think that's also one of the big behavior changes as well, is that we're looking to drive that conversation and that back and forth and that reading behavior. So points become less important as the community continues to build and grow on itself.
If I could just mention too, Jim, with our we have some discussions in the class that are graded. We want to, really assess what the students are saying. And so last semester or this semester, we did keep them in Canvas. So we kind of used, some of our discussions were in Yellowdig, some were in Canvas. And actually, for some of our group work in the fall, I think we might introduce Microsoft Teams for those, because you can keep documents in there. I don't know if that functionality is available with, I know you can do group work in Yellowdig, but I don't know about storage of documents and that kind of a thing.
Oh, sure. So with regard to storage of documents, you can add whatever kind of files you want to any particular post, and you can, as the instructor, you're able to see those files as well.
That's something we need to explore a little bit more. That's one of our purposes of meeting next week, is to explore that.
So got about a few minutes left. Mike, did you want to add or ask or anything, or wrap it up? Or
No, well, yeah, we'll wrap up. But thank you, Bob and Jim and Denise
and Denise, thank you, Denise. Yeah.
for coming and enlightening us. And if any of you have any questions about this or any other tool that we're presenting this summer, just give us a holler, and I can either help you or put you in touch with folks like Bob and Jim that can, make all your dreams come true. And
Let's not go overboard, Mike.
yeah. Anyway,
take a step back here. Yeah.
But nevertheless, can at least enlighten you about that particular tool and how to different ways to use it to effect, right, in helping your students learn and have a better and more supported experience in your classes. So anyway, thank you very much. We appreciate all of you coming. I put in a link in the chat for the schedule for our other workshops. In addition, it'll include all the academic tech trainings as well as other workshops that we'll be doing over the summer and throughout the year. So you can always go back to that link. Again, thank you to Bob, Jim, and Denise, and we will see you hopefully next week, where we are talking. I'm trying to remember. I've got so many things on my mind. Next week's we'll be looking at GradeScope, which is a great tool for grading, especially handwritten student work and things like that. So
just want to add thank you. It was a pleasure from our behalf. It was fun working with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. It was great to meet you, and we look forward to future discussions.
Excellent.
So, all right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.